I'm alone, and I suddenly realized I have a wife and two kids, and if I pass out right now, I am going to die.
What's the appeal of cave diving?
Cave diving, I think to a certain degree, it it a little bit brings out the kid in me. When I was a kid, I watched Jacques Cousteau, and I would often pretend I was scuba diving, like in a shipwreck or something, like under my bed among the dust bunnies, or behind the couch. And it was like this idea of exploring a place and having it seem like it's your place. And I think I get that feeling when I cave dive. It's very exploration-y, and you're not surrounded by endless blue water. You're actually in a finite space. And a lot of people think that that would be claustrophobic, but I don't know. To me, it's not claustrophobic. It's very enjoyable and peaceful and calming.
Even amongst people who are divers, is cave diving kind of a different thing? Because for me personally, like this, no way. You could not give me enough money. Like, I am not going underwater in a cave. No way. Is it different even amongst divers?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, cave diving is a very specialized sport, with very rigorous training standards, just to make sure that people don't do stupid things. It is a very, very easy way to die, if you're not careful and you're not trained and you're not using the right equipment and you don't do it right. But it is one of those things that if you are trained and you are careful and you do have the right equipment and you do follow the rules and you do it right, it actually is quite safe. The accident rate among trained cave divers that follow the rules is quite low. It's actually lower than skiing. But when you hear about like horrific cave accidents, it's almost always people that are not trained, that are not using the right equipment, that are not following the very rigorous rules that have been set up for cave diving safety.
From kind of looking at it just from the technical side of it, how is cave diving different than regular diving?
Well, there are a lot of small ways, but in the big scheme of things, we consider this overhead environment diving, right? So this is diving where if you have an emergency, you can't just get to the surface for air. You are back in a cave. Many of these same rules apply to wreck diving. In some cases, cave diving is also deep, which means it's decompression diving as well. So there's multiple issues preventing you from just getting to the surface in an emergency. And so the whole thing is built around making sure that you never have that issue where you have an emergency where you have no other option but to get to the surface. Whereas in open water diving, you always kind of have that option, unless you're so deep that if you go to the surface, you're going to get bent. You always have that option of just bolting to the surface. And with a cave dive, you cannot do that. So it's all of the training and the rules and the equipment are completely built around the self-sufficiency of not being able to do that, having spare everything. So no matter what happens, you have something to breathe and you're not going to die. And then, of course, there's the rules around not getting lost, because that's another big one. Getting lost is a problem. There's no possible way you can bring enough gas if you're lost. So not getting lost is a big one. And caves are, some of them are very simple, like one tube in and the same tube out, and others are like labyrinths that you can get very, very lost in. So there's always navigation issues. That's a big part of the cave diving training.
Okay, this is going to sound like a very obvious question, but I guess it'll be in the details, right? Like, what exactly constitutes the cave, in the sense that, like, cave diving, is this big wide open thing and that's cave diving, or is cave diving like, no, you're in a small enclosed space, you're going through dark tunnels? Like, where do you kind of like know that's cave diving?
Well, I have done quasi cave diving in some cenotes in Mexico where you are completely out of the sunlight. You can't see light, so you're in the cave, and that's basically the gateway drug to cave diving. Because what happens is open water cave diver, and this is how it happened to me. Open water cave diver, never been in open water diver rather, never been in a cave, goes to Mexico, goes on a cenote like cavern dive, like an introductory dive, and you get a little bit of a taste of it. And you're like, whoa, this is really cool. There's stalactites, there's stalagmites, the water's crystal clear. I'm swimming through a tunnel, but I can still look over there and I see daylight. And then you're like, I really want to go further. I want to know what it looks like more back there. And then you have to get cave certified and spend a lot of money on gear.
How long does it take you to get certified? How much more expensive is the gear to do it?
As a general rule, you should have, I think the official rule is 100 dives under your belt before you even think about starting the cave training. I would say that that's not enough. I would say you should probably have many hundreds of dives and you are extremely, extremely comfortable in the water. Like, I mean, you're a comfortable diver in the water. If somebody comes up to you underwater and pulls your regulator out, you're more likely to pull theirs out just to mess with them before you're going to go looking for your other one. Like, because you're super comfortable in the water and that kind of stuff does not stress you out. If you're the kind of diver that if somebody accidentally kicks your mask off, that's a problem, you should not get cave certified. You are not ready. You need to be like super, super, super comfortable in the water. Nothing bothers you. You're super good at it. Then once you decide to get cave certified, I mean, the total class time to do it is, I think, the bare minimum is you can do the full class in like 8 or 9 days. But I mean, like that's 8 or 9 like 10
Full
to
days.
12-hour long days.
What percentage of divers would you say even try cave diving?
I don't know, not a high percentage. a few percent.
So obviously, like, the danger is drowning ultimately. But
well, I mean, that is the danger of our sport. We are underwater.
right, like, what's the danger? Well, drowning. But what's the danger in cave diving, if that makes sense? Like, how do you end up drowning, essentially?
You can get lost. You can silt the place out, which means you get lost. It's usually getting lost. That's why navigation is so important. Every once in a while, someone will have a medical issue, which isn't the cave diving's fault. And, every once in a while, someone will have an equipment malfunction. But I would say that dive gear is terrifically reliable. And it's really usually more diver error. The diver gets lost. The diver does something wrong. And sometimes people have situations that are totally recoverable, but they panic.
When it happens to somebody, is it usually an experienced cave diver or usually more on the inexperienced side of it?
I actually think that beginner cave divers are very cautious and careful. They've just gotten out of their training and they're very cognizant of the rules, and they're less likely to take chances or do anything like pushing the limit. Then you get these guys that are much more experienced, and with experience comes a little bit less caution. But then they're starting to push really far into caves, and they're pushing really deep, and they're using more and more gear. And I would say that there's a fair amount of that. But I would say a lot. Like, there actually aren't that many cave diving accidents. I mean, if you look at the statistics. I mean, I'm emphasizing it again. Everybody likes to focus on the danger because there's this perception of danger. Oh, it's so...
Yeah.
You always hear it's the world's most dangerous sport. I legitimately don't think that's true.
Are there subsections even within cave diving? Like, there's cave diving, and then there's these different aspects of it even within the sport.
You got guys that are trying to explore caves super, super, super deep. Like caves that like when you get to 7, 8, 900 feet deep, like people don't even do that stuff in the ocean. Like that's like fringe level exploration, and everyone that's involved in that type of exploration knows it's incredibly dangerous, and not necessarily because of the cave, just because of the depth.
When you look at kind of for cave diving, what would you consider like, oh, you're starting to get deep now?
Well, like it's always kind of been considered that 130 feet is the recreational scuba diving limit. If which, there's no like limit, but it's just like when you're trained as an open water diver, you're basically trained to 130 feet. And anything beyond that is considered technical diving. And so I think the same thing applies in caves. If deeper than 130 feet, cave diving in and of itself is already technical diving. But when you add on more than 130 feet, now you're into deep cave diving. And, with that comes additional things you do. It's more things to do to be safe.
Are you ready for some harder / listener submitted questions?
Ooh. Okay.
Best place in the world to go cave diving when you're kind of starting out but know what you're doing. Best place when, like, oh, you really know what you're doing.
I would say that for new cave divers or even someone being trained, you really can't go wrong with the Yucatan, Mexico. The water's clear. The caves are shallow. There's no current. The water's reasonably warm. And there are a lot of beautiful formations. Like they're not boring caves. Like they're beautiful caves. And because they're shallow, like you could just stay in for a long time. You're not going to go into deco. Like it's just a great place to train. And, not just to train, like me and Todd, like go back like at least every other year just to go cave diving. Like it's just a great place to go cave diving. And there's a great, infrastructure for cave diving there. Tons of cenotes, tons of caves, tons of shops to rent tanks, all that stuff. Second part is, I think my favorite place for like more advanced cave diving is the Crystal Caves of Abaco. They are the most highly decorated. This is Bahamas, by the way, Abaco Island in the Bahamas. They are the most highly decorated caves that I've ever seen. There are some deeper sections, but as a general rule, they're not tremendously deep, but what they are is tremendously fragile. And so you need to be absolutely a great, perfect buoyancy cave diver to go in those caves because it's so fragile. You can't be breaking stuff.
Your favorite experience diving?
I've had some of my most magical experiences in the Galapagos with whale sharks and hammerheads, at Darwin Island. Had incredibly magical moments with sperm whales in Dominica. Abaco, which I've already mentioned, is sort of like nirvana for me in cave diving. I do love to cave dive, and that's the place I always dream about getting back to. It's like, I really want to go back there. I got to do that, So I've definitely had just incredible, magical moments in so many places. It's really hard to pick.
Is there a more technical type of diving than cave diving? Or is that about as high as you can get?
Well, there's saturation diving at extreme depths, like what the commercial divers do, where they can't even come up at the end of the dive. They have to get into a diving bell that stays compressed, and then they come up on deck and they decompress them in a chamber over a series of up to like weeks. We're talking about divers that operate beyond 1,000 feet, like doing stuff like, oil and gas industry stuff. I would say that's probably more technical than cave diving. But if we're talking about like the kind of more recreational world, the scuba world, I think cave diving is about as technical as it gets.
Is there a holy grail of cave diving left? Like everybody's trying to do this.
No, but there are caves all over the world that are not fully explored, and everyone wants to find the next big thing. I have a friend named Richard Harris who's exploring a cave in New Zealand called the Pierce Resurgence, and it's a river just mysteriously comes out of the side of a mountain. And so they were like, "Huh, wonder where it goes." So they started diving in it, but the water's like 50 degrees. It's cold. It's New Zealand, and they can't find the bottom. They keep going down and down and down, and they're past 800 feet deep now, which is like insane depths. And they had to build their own habitat underwater for decompression because they need like 16, 18 hours of decompression, and you just can't do it all in the water. And so they're sort of getting out on a bench halfway out of the water so that they can decompress in this bubble that they've built. It's just an incredible project that's all privately funded just by these guys that are trying to find the bottom of this hole in the ground. And they actually just pioneered a completely new diving gas. Deep divers have used helium to help thin the gas out and reduce the narcotic qualities of nitrogen for a while. For 50 years now, the deep diving gas used helium. So we had things called trimix and heliox, where you put helium into the breathing mixture. And when they get that deep, even helium's not light enough for the work of breathing, because the gas gets so thick at that high of a pressure. It's so thick. They switched to hydrogen, which, the Hindenburg proved that hydrogen is a rather dangerous gas. But they're using it because it's lighter and it works better. And they're sort of pioneering this, and this is new to science. And like, people are like, "Man, you're crazy. You're gonna blow up."
But I didn't know you could breathe hydrogen. I thought we had to breathe.
Well, you've got to have some oxygen in there. Obviously, they have a little bit of oxygen in there too. But yeah, and so like these, I mean, you got people like this, like they're pushing the envelope of science to explore caves, and you got to respect it. Like, wow.
Your scariest experience?
I have not had that many. Fortunately, in my diving career, I haven't had too many experiences that were scary. I had one close call with an angry gray reef shark, and that one was a little bit scary. But I mean, overall, I've had mostly very pleasant experiences with sharks. I think sharks are great. So there was that one time. And actually, they both involve sharks. And then the other time, I actually was up in the St. Lawrence filming Greenland sharks, and I after several days of not seeing any, I finally got one to come in, and I was following it, trying to get good shots, and just completely focused on my camera. And I was on open circuit, so I didn't have an unlimited gas supply, and so I was kind of trying to not breathe too hard, even though I was working very hard. So it's like, try jogging around the block, but try to like skip breathe when you do it. Hold your breath a while and then breathe, and then hold your breath a while. And I ended up like way deeper than I realized, and a little bit hyperventilated, and super hypercapnia, and lightheaded. And I had a realization for a brief moment that I might pass out. And I'm alone because my buddy couldn't keep up, and that's not their fault, it's mine. I'm alone, and I suddenly realized I have a wife and 2 kids, and if I pass out right now, I am going to die. I will drown. And I looked at my computer, and I'm at like 170 when I should be at like 130. I'm on the wrong gas to be at 170, and I'm lightheaded. And I freaked a little bit, I did what you need to do. I started breathing very deeply without regard for gas supply. I punched my BC to get some buoyancy, so that if I did pass out, I would hit the surface, and at least maybe it'd be able to revive me. And when you do something like that, what's going to happen. You're going to start accelerating towards the surface, and you can lose control and get bent because you come shooting out of the water and you didn't do a deco stop. Shooting to the surface from 170 is a horrible idea. And fortunately, as I passed like 100 feet, I completely gained clarity. The narcosis went away. The hypercapnia went away. I became very clear and focused again. And I immediately started venting the air from my BC to slow down. And I came to a stop at about 50 feet, which was where my first deco stop was. So, uh, made it look like a pro move, but mostly just lucky. And, I did a series of decos, making sure that I wasn't going to get bent. And when I popped up, the people on the boat were completely freaking out because they saw me vanish into the murk, chasing a shark, going down, and they had no idea where I went or how far I was gone. They lost sight of my bubbles and they thought I drowned. And I had to play like everything was fine. I was like, "Oh no, I'm fine. What do you guys? You worry too much." And I got back on the boat and I told one of my buddies who was on the boat, "Dude, I almost died." And and I became much more aware that there is no shot, no matter how long you've been waiting for the shark that has not appeared, there is no shot that is worth risking your life for. Absolutely nothing. There's nothing. I don't care if I see the first birthing blue whale next to a giant squid. Like there's no shot that is worth being dead for.
Does everybody who's a diver though get a reminder like that occasionally that like, oh no, don't push it. Like you can't.
I see people make really dumb mistakes with cameras. That's why I also say like you shouldn't be diving with a camera until you've had 100 dives. Like cameras are so distracting. We were in the Galapagos a few years ago, and a guy on our boat got distracted by a sea turtle on a night dive and ran out of air at 100 feet. And thank goodness he was able to shoot to the surface and he didn't die. But he got bent. He was bent, and we had to cancel the trip for everybody who had spent $7,000 for the week on this boat. We had to turn the boat back and get him to a recompression chamber. He got bent. The reason he got bent, he ran out of air. The reason he ran out of air, distracted by a camera. He was after the world's greatest shot of a sea turtle. And, I make fun of it a little bit, but dude, I have done that. Like, I have done that. You get in the moment. Oh my goodness, that's the coolest looking sea turtle. And look, he's eating a sponge. I could get the greatest shot of this. No, I mean, I only have 300 PSI, but I'm okay. You know what I mean? Like, you can do that. And, I know several people that have gotten in very, bad situations because of cameras, because of the distraction of a camera or the distraction of trying to shoot something that was really awesome, and they run out of air.
My limited experience, so I used to be a news photographer, and you get behind that lens and you forget that reality is out in front of it. Like, no. You don't get closer to the active shooting scene.
Right.
Like, just because, back up.
Well, yeah,
happy your stuff.
Always people would say, you're filming sharks, they're kind of close. And I'm like, well, I'm completely safe because I see them through this viewfinder that's only 3 inches, so they're only this big.
Right, like I'm not actually here.
I know. It's like I'm in another world behind the camera. I'm just looking at everything through a monitor, and I'm just trying to do the best job I can, and I tune everything else out.
For somebody who's just getting into this, like, what advice would you give them?
Have enough experience as an open water diver that you're actually ready for cave diving. 2, be really good at buoyancy control. Buoyancy control is much more important than you think with cave diving. And then I guess the best thing is get the best instructor you can find. Like, ask around, find the best instructor you can find. I've been very fortunate because of Blue World. I know like all the top people. And so when I wanted to get cave certified, I went to one of the top cave divers in the world. Like, not everybody gets to do that. But if just find the best instructor you can and spend the time. Like, it's not about how fast can I get this C card. That's not what it's about. Getting cave certified is a whole process, and it's fun. And you're not trying to get through it. Okay. You're trying to have fun and you're trying to learn. And for me, what I loved about the cave training was, so here I am. I'm a guy who's been diving for 30 years or 25 at the time, right? And I'm going to learn all these new skills. I'm the kind of guy, a lot of divers are like this. When you've been diving for a long time, you don't think about it that much. You throw your stuff on, you go over the side of the boat, off you go. And when you get to the point where you start jumping off the boat without your fins, without your mask, you've gotten to the point where you don't think about it as much as you probably should, because you've gotten so you just go through the motions and you go. You're not doing a checklist. And when you get to that level of comfort as a diver, like being careless, when you all of a sudden get thrown into the situation of having to learn all these new cave diving skills, it's fun. Like, it's challenging, but like, it's fun. It's like, no, I can handle this. Like, I understand that if my instructor comes up and starts up pushing the inflator button on my regulator, or, trying to do something to like see how I'm going to react during the training, I'm not going to panic. I'm going to be like, oh, that's right. Okay, what do I do in this situation? Like, it's fun to like learn those skills. So I would say like a cave diving class is really fun. I was actually bummed when mine was over. Like, I mean, I was happy. I got the C card. He said, congratulations, you're a cave diver. I was like, yay. And then a couple of minutes later, I was like, oh, like, that was fine.
No, my dude.
I want to do, can I do another class? That was fun.
That's pretty much all the questions we got. Is there anything that we missed, or what's kind of coming up next for you? Where can people find you? Tell me about Blue World. All the questions all wrapped into one, basically.
So my big thing these days is IMAX movies. This is my new one called The Dolphins. It's coming out right now in theaters all around the world. There's a website. You can Google it. It's got the name of all the theaters that it's open in and that it's coming to. Like 40 or 50 theaters around the world. It was a great adventure. Spent 2 years filming it all around the world. So I'm not just a cave diver. I was lucky enough to, when I was younger, to find the thing that I'm passionate about and be stupid enough to quit my job and try to do that for real. And I was young and stupid when I did it. And now I'm so grateful for being young and stupid when I did it. Because if I had waited too long, I was an engineer at Raytheon. It was a perfectly good job and I made a good salary. And I had a perfectly nice cubicle, and I worked with great people, and I had a super duper retirement plan. And a lot of people, including my parents, were like, why would you quit that job? I'm like, I don't know, the call of the ocean, man. I want to go out and scuba dive. But here I am. I get to be a kind of a part-time YouTuber, and I get to make IMAX movies and travel the world and go scuba diving. Like, how awesome is that, right?
I kind of lied to you. It was not our last question. I wanted to set this up because you mentioned the movie Call of the Dolphins, and this is one of our questions. Okay. Are dolphins jerks?
They can be a little snarky. Yeah. I wouldn't say they're jerks, but I would say that dolphins are just like people. They have personalities, and there are some that are very sweet, and there are some that are mischievous, and there are others that, and sometimes they're in a good mood and sometimes they're in a bad mood. So I've had magical experiences with dolphin looking me in the eye and swimming side by side and playing a game of pass the seaweed with me, and I've also had dolphins that swam up and literally tail smacked me in the face. So I was on a dive a long time ago where there were some semi-captive dolphins that they had at this place called Anthony's Key Resort down in Roatan. And they're usually dolphins that were in captivity, but they can't let them go because they actually don't know how to fend for themselves. And so they bring them to this facility where they're in an enclosure that's open to the ocean. And
right.
Come and go. Yeah. And some of them will vanish for a couple days, and then they'll come back when they get hungry. And they hang around, and there's some that, never go out. They can hardly get them to leave. And then there's some that, they'll go out for a few hours. And what they'll do is they will take people out on a dive, and they try to get the dolphins to come over and play with the divers. And they usually do, because divers are mildly entertaining to dolphins. Because we look ridiculous underwater, completely ridiculous. And so I think they find that hilarious. And so they'll come over. So this one dolphin, this bottlenose dolphin, swims up in front of me. This was in my still photography days. So I had this big still camera with these big strobes. And the dolphin came up and looked at me, and I looked at the dolphin. I'm having a Zen moment. We're staring into each other's eyes. I bring my camera up and I take a picture, and the two strobes just flash really bright. And the dolphin blinks, looks at me, and then the dolphin just goes, and headbutts the strobe, because I put the camera down to look, and the strobe is right in front of my face, and the dolphin goes and headbutts the strobe, and the strobe goes bam right into my forehead. I had a huge gash on my forehead, and I came up to the boat and I handed my camera up, and I didn't realize, like, it hurt, but I didn't realize it was like bleeding.
Right.
Like, it was bleeding. I came out with this like blood coming down my face, and the dive master was like, "What happened?" I'm like, "What?" And he goes, "What happened to your head?" I'm like, "Oh, the dolphin headbutted me." So yes, I got headbutted once by a dolphin.
Thanks for checking out this episode of Profoundly Pointless. From society and sexuality to science and sports, every week we explore something new from a side of life you may never have heard of. Subscribe if you're interested. There's a playlist, I think, on the right if you want to see more videos like this. Someday I'm going to finish painting that wall, and just for the record, I'm not orange. I just don't know how to fix this. But thanks for checking out the show. Would love to hear from you. Okay, I should stop. Stop. There it is.